it's really a bummer sometimes as a business owner. You end up work because of my mistake, then you have to eat that. A customer from saying hello to this is their product in their hand, how you collected the money, how you. All right, so I got the plates that I need to pick up. Actually, pretty funny doing this recording and driving thing. Probably took an extra 25 minutes to get here. Completely missed my turn, but. Alright guys, wanted to try something a little bit different today. I'm going to pick up some metal that I sent to a bender's. Unfortunately, where I am, I don't really have many shops that you can send them parts to bend, and not nearby. Like, the only place that I really know about is like, I'm driving about an hour here, maybe 45 minutes if I get lucky with traffic. But something that I've struggled with, there are shops here with brake presses, and I definitely, like, I even worked in some of them. It's just not all of them do outside work, or they just want to use their own material. Obviously, when you're running a plasma cutting business, you're cutting your own stuff a lot of times, and, like, you know, a shop with a brake press might not have a plasma system. So, like, no matter what, there's scenarios where you're cutting the material and you have to bend. You have to get it bent after the fact. If you can't do that yourself, you gotta sub it out or send it to shops that can. So it's kind of a problem I face. And then I thought, you know, it's really a bummer sometimes as a business owner. You end up doing all sorts of driving, delivering, troubleshooting, bringing stuff to a job site, or going back because something was forgotten, or if you're working with crews or employees that they need help on something, so you need to go mitigate that. And I figured, what better of a time to film and talk about this stuff, because you know, it's just a lot of dead time in a business when you're driving to and from different scenarios. And this is like, the part and the job I'm going to pick up is not worth the driving I'm doing now. It's just I don't have another reason to go to that part of town. So it's something you struggle with in business, and that's kind of what I wanted to focus on in this little talk or discussion, kind of rant on the things they don't tell you in business. And I'll give you the ones that I learned along the way, and obviously they're more geared towards you know, metal manufacturing, welding, fabrication, and the like. But you know, it's been humbling. I've been, you know, in business for over 5 years, like operationally, like properly operational for about 5. It's going to be 5 basically in a month from now, and then so there's quite a bit of things that I've learned that have humbled me greatly, that have been like, I tell people, like, you know, sometimes you get punched in the chin in business, and that's for sure. You know, we've made big money mistakes, big time mistakes, and all sorts of things. So I'll try and go into it. I'll list them off the top of my head. I'll try not to cut this video too much there. It's just something that really popped into my head because I knew I had this long drive ahead. So I guess, I mean, the first thing is just how much time you spend in your business that's not actually the service you provide. And you learn that pretty quick. And a lot of people say, like, when you run a business, you're, you know, 80% of the time you're a businessman, and 20% of the time you're actually doing the thing you started your business for. So, you know, if I work 40 hours in a week, only about 20% of the time I'm under a welding mask, or I'm working on metal in the shop. Even though I do hours and hours and hours a week in the shop, I'm always doing the back end stuff on the business, talking to clients, getting on the computer, updating websites, online sales, shipping, deliveries, all sorts of things that aren't the actual service that I'm doing. And it's something you have to struggle with as a business owner. Obviously, you know, the direction we've tried to go to mitigate that is there's two ways. The 20% of the actual work, you could hire people and subcontract, and I've messed around with that a bit. I've had some workers and helpers in my garage, but I just don't think I'm there yet. I often got stuck with not enough time to direct them properly and to really do work that's making money. So I'm paying them and trying to keep them busy with some of the work that I have ready for them, and a lot of, shop and internal projects, just so that I can give them 8 hours in a day. And that's, it's really tough. Like, to jump to employees, you really got to make sure your workflow is ready. There's a lot of stuff that I just do because I'm an owner operator, and I don't write it down because it's simple. I've done it 100 times, but really you got to get into the practice of operations building and how to take a customer from saying hello to this is their product in their hand, how you collected the money, how you navigated the specifications, the drawings, the approvals, the ordering the material. Like, these are all different steps in the business that if you're not creating a method to explain that and pass that off to your workers, you're still doing it, whether they're in the garage or not. So that's one, just how much time you're spending that's not actually the service that you started your business for. Another thing is money in, money out. It's incredibly humbling, and the people that don't run businesses around you, and often when you're starting a business, your friends and family, they don't fully get the scenarios you're going through. And when I was working a job and I have $2,000 of rent or mortgage to pay, and I make $4,000 in a month at my job, I know that, like, I have to keep aside some money and make sure I can pay my mortgage. But in a business, that bill still exists, but I might make $30,000 in a month, money coming in. But I've had months where, there's, say, 30,000 coming in and 32 going out, and you ask yourself, whoa, how did this get out of hand? Where's all this money going? And if you're not smart, and if you're not bidding correctly, or you're trying to grow, like, we get stuck spending way more money sometimes than we're bringing in on large jobs or on medium-sized jobs that are, the end client's going to pay like $1,000 or $2,000, and say the material is about $400, but it's going to be more economical for you to buy like full lengths and full sheets, and you'll end up paying, say, $800, twice the price. To be more economical, you'll get a bit more inventory. But on that job, if, say, you're only making $1,000 and you made a material list order of $800, and you're working that job for a week or for a couple days, you're not making, like, $200 for a couple days work is not a lot in a business. So it's something that happens. You got to be mindful of money in, money out. It's something we've really humbled ourselves, and, like, sometimes it's attractive to say, I get this job and there's a lot of, I have to do some tube rolling. And because this job is worth $3,000 and a tube roller is $2,000, then I can buy the tube roller and I'm still profitable, but then I still have to buy the material, do the work. And if I'm buying a machine to do one job, it may have been worth it to pay or subcontract, even if it's $400, $500, $600, to get another shop that can roll it for me. So I'm not invested in a machine that I use just for this job. And I've done it several times where I get excited, this job will cover a new machine for me, and then that machine collects dust for a year, and then I've since sold those machines. And it's been humbling to realize that you don't need everything. And if you're going to get stuff and new machines and offer new services, you really need to make sure that you're offering those services and that you're marketing. And I ended up with 4 or 5 main machines that were quite expensive, but I'm not getting cash flow out of them because in general I'm doing welding fabrication and CNC plasma, and the other stuff are nice perks, nice add-ons, if I had the cash flow, it's always nice to have those other machines. But when you're a new business, a new startup, it's smart to be lean, so you're not stuck, making payments or spending your profits before you've even put it towards, other bills or potential upcoming bills. Like if you profit a good amount of money and then 2 big jobs come up and you get some deposits, but you still need to make large material purchases, you need to pay a helper, or maybe you need to sub some portion of it out. And say like this, another example of money in, money out, where the exchange is tough. So say, for round numbers, it's a $2,000 job and you need $500 in material, and you're going to need to subcontract the powder coating, and say the powder coating bill is going to be about $500, and maybe you have, like, it's a very easy job where, say, it's less than a day's work, and within that day you could finish the job and send the parts out to powder coating, and so like there's profit there. Like your cost is going to be $500 for powder coating, $500 for material, and then there's $1,000 left of this project that you're going to finish in a day. That's good money if you can make $1,000 a day. But sometimes you take that deposit for 50%, it's $1,000. You need to buy material, you need to pay the powder coaters, and then say on that same week you're out of welding gas, you're out of welding wire. All of a sudden you need to spend another $400 or $500, and your next job you collected a deposit, so you have cash flow in, but you need to spend like $1,500 with the $1,000 you just got. So you really got to leave room for money, and that's several things there. It's pricing more, pricing better, giving yourself more margin, and not spending the profits from the last jobs. You need to be able to float your work, if that makes sense. And if you're struggling to float your work, which I do, and I still do sometimes, it's a number of reasons stacked on to each other. You're not pricing high enough, you're stuck in a hole you're trying to climb out of, or you're just spending too much money on the luxuries of trying to own stuff and do stuff in-house, when you'd be better off taking a little less profit, paying to subcontract it, instead of buying machinery or time to do stuff that you're not equipped to do. I don't know how long this video will go. It'll get pretty ranty if I keep going. But another thing was a really tough thing to learn is, when you own a business and the buck stops with you, so you're managing client expectations, you're talking to other business owners or end users, and they're unsatisfied with your work, or they think you didn't finish, or something's not right, or it's, in your opinion, like you've done everything that's asked, but they were expecting more. And that's a whole dance to battle, and to learn how to properly communicate to customers, set expectations, explain what is being charged or what cost what, and if they have additional requests, how to navigate politely saying, no problem, I can do that, that costs more, this is why it costs more, or this is extra work, or I don't have time to do this extra thing you added on. It may be something we can relook at in the future. And I really struggled with this specifically, where as a new business owner, you're really trying to satisfy your clients. And as a new welder fabricator, obviously this business is about 5 years old, but I had only really been building stuff for 6-7 years. So just like 2 years of messing around in my garage, and I'm learning stuff, I'm not the best welder. I'm a YouTube welder who's watched videos and learned how to stick stuff together, and the rest of machinery and technical skills I've learned by working in other shops and warehouses, and that's it. But what I often struggled, and more so in the first few years of business, but it still happens to this day, where there's just a misalignment in your customer's expectations. So they expected a different finish, or they told you everything they wanted and you make it exactly to their specifications, to their drawings, to the very last detail, and it doesn't function how they thought it might. So it's a custom product, their design, their request, and it doesn't serve the purpose that they hoped, or not as well as they hoped. And often a customer in that situation will ask you, what can we do next, or can we change this, or why don't you make it a bit bigger or a bit stronger? And you're like, well, I can for sure, but the old me and the more naive business owner will say, yeah, I can fix it because it's not working like we all expected it to work, you know. But you have to understand, like, there's a boundary that you need to learn to set, that this is what you paid for. You know, if it's a product that needs to function after, and there's some kind of missing element that needs to be added on or changed, that's a new service that we're going to charge for. We're going to come up with a price, or we're going to run a running total based on hourly. And it's all stuff that really you need to learn to be comfortable talking to with your clients. And those, I'll kind of stop the list here. That's 3 like big humbling lessons that we learned in our first years of business. So it's just the amount of time you're spending away from the actual work, in the actual business and back end of the work, the money in, money out, cash flow, the traps of spending too much, and buying new stuff, bigger stuff, because if I buy this, I can do more work, and you really eat into your cash flow. And then the last thing, like I just talked about, is managing customer expectations or final products, you know, and collect, you know, it's a whole thing. I don't know how much I dived into it, but, you know, these customers that aren't happy, sometimes they're hard to collect with. And that goes into the lesson too. Like, you need to learn how to make sure you're collecting deposits that cover you in case there's a disgruntled customer, in case something goes wrong. I mean, and in these cases, I'll be completely honest, there are cases where I made a mistake or missed something, and like, even knowing that, you know, you got to charge your clients for extra work and stuff, but if I made the mistake and I need to do extra work because of my mistake, then you have to eat that. And if you're not collecting large enough deposits, you're not pricing to allow for material waste or some amount of do-overs or troubleshooting. Like, if it's a harder job or a more expensive material, you really got to be mindful about what your markup is. You know, if it's large expensive pieces of stainless steel or aluminum, for example, maybe you need to, you know, charge extra to account for it. Oh, if I really mess this up, like, that's another $600 sheet of stainless I need to buy. So maybe I'll be a bit more heavy on my markup than a sheet of steel that's $100, and it's way more forgiving with like re-welding mess ups and grinding and finishing and painting. Stainless, you know, you can hide mistakes and stuff too, but it's a whole different ball game. If you're not a stainless shop and you're just doing a one-off job on an expensive material, then you got to be ready to charge and cover yourself. All right, so I got the plates that I need to pick up. Actually, pretty funny doing this recording and driving thing. Probably took an extra 25 minutes to get here. Completely missed my turn, but anyways, we got some content out of it, and we'll catch you on the next one. Subscribe and like for more.